This is a news unbox personal, and let's go through the main headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump says negotiators should take their time in talks with Iran, insisting Washington will not rush an agreement. Russia launched one of its largest aerial attacks on Kiev since the start of the war, killing at least 4 people and injuring nearly 100. And World Health Organization reports more than 900 suspected Ebola cases in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, including 101 confirmed infections. U.S. President Donald Trump says negotiators should take their time in talks with Iran, insisting Washington will not rush an agreement. He says discussions are continuing with key issues still to be resolved.
250 years, but that I'm not going to get away with.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington is in no hurry to finalize a nuclear agreement with Iran, insisting that time is on our side as negotiations continue amid rising tensions in the Middle East. In a Truth Social post, Trump said the U.S. blockade on Iranian ships in the Strait of Hormuz would remain in full force until an agreement is reached, certified and signed. He also reiterated that Iran would not be allowed to develop or acquire a nuclear weapon. However, Trump said negotiations are continuing in what he described as an orderly and constructive manner. His comments come just one day after he suggested that a potential peace agreement with Iran had been largely negotiated and could eventually lead to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. According to a senior U.S. official, an immediate deal is unlikely, with key details still under discussion. The official says Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei has approved the broad framework of the agreement, although the outcome remains uncertain. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian says Tehran is prepared to reassure the international community that it is not seeking nuclear weapons, but he also stressed that Iran would never compromise on its honor and dignity. At the same time, Iran's Tasnim news agency denied reports claiming Tehran had agreed to halt nuclear activities for 20 years or remove nuclear materials from the country. Still, major disagreements remain over sanctions relief, frozen Iranian oil revenues, Tehran's nuclear ambitions, and regional conflicts involving Iran-backed groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, said he and Trump agree that any final agreement with Iran must eliminate the nuclear threat posed by Tehran. Netanyahu also said Trump reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself against threats across the region, including Lebanon. Turning to global markets, oil prices fell sharply amid uncertainty surrounding the talks. Brent crude dropped more than 4% to below $99 a barrel, while U.S. crude also declined by more than 4%. Iran's Revolutionary Guards say only 33 vessels passed through the Strait of Hormuz in the past 24 hours after receiving permission from Tehran, far below the roughly 140 ships that typically cross daily before the conflict. Analysts say that while any agreement could help reinforce the fragile ceasefire and ease pressure on global markets, disruptions to energy supplies may continue well into 2027, keeping fuel and food prices elevated worldwide.
Oil markets started the week lower as renewed optimism over U.S.-Iran diplomacy raised concerns about supply risks through a key global shipping route, with traders reacting to signals of possible progress despite continued uncertainty over a deal.
Oil prices fell around 6% to two-week lows on Monday as optimism grew that the United States and Iran were moving closer to a possible understanding that could reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude futures dropped $5.85 or 5.7% to $97.69 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate fell $5.75 or 6% to $90.85. Both benchmarks hit their lowest levels since May 7th earlier in the session. On Saturday, U.S. President Donald Trump said Washington and Iran had largely negotiated an understanding aimed at reopening the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route that previously carried around 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas shipments. Analysts say the comments have raised hopes of near-term relief for markets, though they caution that significant risks and unresolved issues remain around any potential agreement. However, there is also caution in the market, with Trump later urging negotiators not to rush a deal and analysts noting that talks have broken down in the past, leaving traders wary of overreacting. It is also expected that a full return to normal oil flows through the strait would take months, as damaged energy infrastructure is repaired. In the United States, energy firms added oil and gas rigs for a fifth consecutive week. The rig count rose by 7 to 558, its highest since June 2025, although still down 8 rigs, or about 1% from a year earlier. Analysts say the data suggests tentative stabilization after last week's sell-off, but overall market conviction remains weak.
Russia launched one of its largest aerial assaults on Kiev since the start of the war on Sunday. The barrage killed at least 4 people and wounded nearly 100 others. Hours later, Ukraine reportedly struck a major Russian oil pumping facility supplying the Moscow region.
Russia's hours-long overnight barrage killed 4 people in Kyiv and 2 more in the surrounding area, and it wounded nearly 100, according to Ukrainian officials. Authorities said dozens of residential buildings and several schools had been damaged, many in the center of Kyiv. Ukrainian President Zelensky, who on Sunday visited a number of damaged buildings in Kyiv, said Russia had also targeted water supply facilities, saying Moscow wanted to damage them before the summer increased demand. In total, the Air Force said Russia launched 90 missiles and 600 drones. Moscow said it used Oreshnik, Iskander, Kinzhal and Zircon missiles in retaliation for what it described as Ukrainian strikes on civilian targets inside Russia. Kyiv denies targeting civilians. Russia's defense ministry said the strikes were aimed at Ukrainian military command facilities, including sites used by ground forces and military intelligence, as well as air bases and military-industrial infrastructure. European leaders condemned the Kyiv attack, with Britain and Germany describing the use of the Oreshnik, an intermediate-range missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads, as an escalation. Meanwhile, following the strikes on Kyiv and the surrounding region, Ukraine reportedly targeted a major Russian oil pumping station supplying the Moscow region. The Vtorovo facility, part of Russia's state-owned pipeline network, also supplies fuel to major Russian airports.
Serbian President Alexander Vučić on Sunday began a 5-day visit to China, while highlighting growing ties between Belgrade and Beijing. Vučić also told reporters he could resign soon as large anti-government demonstrations continue across Serbia.
Serbian President Alexander Vučić arrived in Beijing on Sunday for a state visit to China from May 24th to 28th, marking his first state visit to the country. According to Chinese media, Serbia is also the first European country to agree with China on building a community with a shared future for the new era. At the start of his visit, Vučić said he could resign soon. According to M1 TV, he stressed that he would not prematurely reduce his powers, as former Serbian President Boris Tadić had done. He said a president either resigns or remains in office until the end of the mandate. Vučić's remarks came as large anti-government protests continued in Belgrade, where thousands gathered in the city centre demanding political change in the latest wave of demonstrations against his rule. Despite tensions at home, Vučić received a warm welcome in China at the start of his 5-day visit, aimed at strengthening bilateral ties between Beijing and Belgrade. Upon arriving in Beijing, he visited the Great Wall, where he watched performances of traditional Serbian folk dances and songs.
This speaks a lot about Chinese people. This speaks a lot about your persistence, your desire to defend your country, your borders, your sovereignty, independence. But also it presents always the diligence and dedication of Chinese people, which I admire very much and very happy to be here for the first time.
Vučić is scheduled to hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang to review bilateral relations and discuss international issues.
Pakistan and China have signed cooperation agreements worth more than $1 billion during a business and investment conference in Hangzhou. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has met Chinese Premier Li Qiang in Beijing, with the two countries signing new agreements to expand cooperation in trade, technology, agriculture and education. The talks also reaffirmed what both sides described as their long-standing strategic partnership, as Pakistan and China mark 75 years of diplomatic ties. Sharif said cooperation was also expanding into emerging sectors, including space technology and artificial intelligence, highlighting Pakistan's participation in China's space station program.
I would like to say we are here to convey you that Pakistan is looking for expertise, experience, investments, and above all, I would like to say our friendship is deeper than the deepest ocean and higher than Himalayas. But ever since we have launched our space program, I would now say that our friendship is touching the skies.
In the Gaza Strip, many Palestinians say the Eid al-Adha holiday is once again being overshadowed by war, displacement and severe shortages.
As Muslims around the world prepare to celebrate Eid al-Adha, many Palestinians in the Gaza Strip say they will once again spend the holiday without the traditional sacrificial animals. As officials say, no livestock has entered the territory for a third straight year. In Khan Yunis, many families continue living in tents and struggling to access basic supplies as Eid al-Adha approaches. Displaced resident Sonia Abu Taima said her children have not experienced a joyful Eid in years.
The children used to be happy in such atmospheres and enjoy it. But today we've been through difficult circumstances. We did not expect this war on us, and to have this third Eid al-Adha go by without our children being happy like the rest of the world. Even though Eid is coming, but it's not Eid, it is coming while every day we have martyrs, every day there is bombing, every day there is destruction. What Eid are we talking about in Gaza? There is no Eid in Gaza at all.
Displaced Palestinian Iyad al-Arja says a slaughterhouse once used for Eid celebrations has now become a shelter for displaced families.
This slaughterhouse where we're sitting in now, look, there are displaced families living in it. In this slaughterhouse, people used to offer sacrifices for Eid in it. Now, the displaced have come. Look, these are the tents of the displaced people, and this is all full of rats, weasels, and things like that. This place was for sacrifices, where people would come to be happy and bring their children, each bringing their children along to enjoy the sacrifice. Now, as you can see it is destroyed.
Gaza officials say the war has severely damaged the territory's livestock sector, which once imported thousands of animals ahead of Eid each year. Meanwhile, COGAT, the coordinator of government activities in the territories, says it continues facilitating deliveries of food products into Gaza, while Hamas says aid levels remain far below what is needed.
China has launched the Shenzhou 23 crewed spacecraft carrying 3 astronauts to the Tiangong space station, as Beijing pushes ahead with ambitions to become a leading global space power. One crew member is expected to remain in orbit for around a year as China expands its long-duration human spacelift program. A news correspondent Mahnur Maktoum in Beijing has more.
China has successfully launched the Shenzhou 23 crewed spacecraft, sending 3 astronauts to the Tiangong space station in the latest step forward for Beijing to rapidly advancing space program. The mission includes Hong Kong's first astronaut and will see 1 crew member remain in orbit for approximately 1 year as China expands its long-duration human spaceflight capabilities. The spacecraft lifted off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwestern China aboard a Long March 2F carrier rocket. State media said that the crew will carry out a range of scientific experiments, maintenance operations, and technology tests aboard the Tiangong station during their stay in orbit. The mission is also expected to support medical and biological research linked to extended human habitation in space. The launch comes as China pushes ahead with ambitious long-term goals, including landing astronauts on the moon before 2030, developing lunar infrastructure, and expanding deep space exploration programs. Beijing has invested heavily in its space sector over the past decade, achieving milestones including lunar sample return missions, a Mars rover landing, and the construction of the Tiangong orbital station. The latest mission highlights China's determination to compete with the United States and other major powers in the increasingly strategic space sector. Manu Mukhtar, A News, Beijing.
The World Health Organization says more than 900 suspected Ebola cases, including 101 confirmed infections, have now been recorded in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Surveillance has been stepped up as the outbreak continues to spread, with officials warning that case numbers could still rise. The outbreak linked to the rare Bundibugyo strain has been declared a public health emergency of international concern, with no approved vaccine or specific treatment currently available. The outbreak has also been linked to more than 170 deaths, including 3 Red Cross volunteers who likely contracted the virus while handling bodies before it was identified. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war following the massive Kiev attack and stalled peace talks. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News, and now we continue with our top story for discussion. A dramatic escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war after Kiev came under one of the heaviest continued missile and drone attacks in recent months. The strike, which reportedly involved hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles, caused widespread destruction across the capital and renewed global alarm over a dangerous new phase of the conflict. This comes as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington remains ready to facilitate renewed Ukraine-Russia talks, even as diplomacy has stalled and battlefield escalation intensifies. Joining us now is Ali Kasman, who speaks to us from Chicago. Mr. Kasman, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Mr. Kasman, how significant is this latest wave of attacks on Kiev in terms of escalation compared to previous strikes? And what does the reported use of the Oreshnik missile suggest about Russia's evolving military strategy?
That suggests they're desperate to use at least something that appears to be significant. The reality is Oreshnik is an old technology from 1960s. Yes, it is very hard to intercept, nearly impossible with Patriot systems that Ukraine has today. It requires more modern and sophisticated interceptors, especially given that on the re-entry, Oreshnik splits into, I believe, 11 vehicles, and they go down at very high speed, Mach 11 something. And of course, when they hit, they cause a lot of damage, just like any other attack on Ukraine in the past 4+ years. So yes, this is a big threat to Kyiv. Yes, that night was very loud from all the reports, and no questions, this is a terrorist activity by Russia. They're trying to gain some advantage hitting civilians because they cannot get that sort of upper hand on the battlefield. The battlefield is a very grim scene right now for Russia. For the longest time, they were exchanging thousands and thousands of their own people for very modest square kilometers. But right now, even that is being diminished to a crawl, barely noticeable.
Mr. Kasman, how does this affect the already stalled diplomatic efforts mentioned by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio? And could Washington realistically revive trilateral talks between Ukraine, Russia and the United States at this stage?
Right. Look, we talked about possible peace negotiations on this program many times in the past, and every time I stated that there's no way peace negotiations are going to be fruitful until the situation is changing on the ground. Any agreement is only going to reflect the reality, and the reality is that the situation on the front is pretty balanced. As I said earlier, Russia recently stopped gaining much advantage or much territory. So we will have to see when and if Ukraine is able to change it to a situation where Russia is in a clear disadvantage, and then they will reconsider their position and they may consider any sort of cease of hostilities. But until they feel the pain, any negotiations are not going to bear any fruit.
So how might NATO allies respond politically or militarily to this level of escalation?
Very, very weak. I don't think there's any response. It feels like most people got tired at the moment by continuous attacks on Ukraine, and no matter how bad it's going to be, they will treat it as business as usual. They already seen this before, and they don't take it as news. The biggest threat to NATO as alliance is their very weak response. They really have done a very poor job helping Ukraine militarily initially when legacy weapons made all the difference. Right now, things have flipped to technology. Ukraine developed drone tech. Europe and the United States, by the way, both of them very actively looking into that technology. And really what needs to change is they need to heavily invest into Ukrainian tech, helping them grow, helping them scale. And that's the best way forward for both Ukraine and its allies.
But what options does Ukraine have to strengthen its air defense against such large-scale combined attacks?
Options again, layered defense. You intercept the incomings at the early stages, but then you use other techniques to intercept what's left in the closer proximity to the city. And look, one thing that actually I think is missing in the headlines, when Russia sent over 1,500 drones into Ukraine a few days ago, over 90% of them, 90% over that, were intercepted by Ukrainian air defense. This is amazing result given the sheer amount of drones coming in. So Ukraine is doing excellent work defending their skies. Unfortunately, when several of those Shaheeds do come through and hit a civilian building and there are casualties, it hits the news, and this is obviously a tragedy. But imagine how much worse it could have been if not for the excellent air defense that, again, took most of that Shaheeds down.
Mr. Kasman, finally, where do you see this conflict heading in the next few months? Toward de-escalation, containment, or renewed negotiations?
It will probably going to stay on a low burner for a while until one of the sides is able to fundamentally shift the situation on the front line. But I don't, honestly, given the current state of things, I don't expect any significant changes to the front line.
Ali Kasman, thank you very much for your clear insights and analysis on this rapidly developing situation. We appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Azerbaijan is preparing to host a major international energy gathering this June, bringing together key industry players, government officials and global experts. The event will feature a wide program of discussions, exhibitions and high-level meetings focused on energy cooperation and innovation.
Baku Energy Week will be hosted by Azerbaijan from the 1st to the 3rd of June. This year's event is expected to bring together international and local companies from 45 countries.
Under this year's programme, the main topics of discussion will include energy security, green energy, oil and gas projects, renewable energy sources, regional cooperation and investment opportunities. Baku Energy Forum will open for the first time at the Baku Expo Centre on June 1st. The forum's subsequent sessions will be held at the Baku Congress Centre.
The event will feature panel discussions, presentations, development sessions and document signing ceremonies. At the same time, the Trans-Logistica exhibition will be held, focusing on current issues in the region's transport and logistics sector.
Within the framework of this year's Baku Energy Week programme, a number of high-level events aimed at strengthening regional and international cooperation in the energy sector are planned. One of these events will be a meeting attended by ministers from D8 countries.
The state oil company of Azerbaijan is the main partner of this year's Baku Energy Week. The company's leadership will speak at the Forum on Energy Transition, Future Strategies and Regional Cooperation. The design of the SOCAR exhibition stand has also been developed around this concept. It will present information about the company's history, current activities and future plans. It will also highlight SOCAR's role in the energy sector, its international partnerships and its contribution to energy security. Baku Energy Forum is expected to bring together more than 700 participants and over 60 international speakers. The forum will discuss energy security, green energy, regional cooperation, digitalization, artificial intelligence and sustainable energy systems. The exhibition will showcase innovations in oil and gas field development, drilling technologies, pipelines, digital solutions, artificial intelligence and decarbonisation.
Officials and diplomats have gathered in Baku to mark Africa Day conference and discuss expanding ties between Azerbaijan and African countries. The talks are focusing on trade, investment and long-term strategic cooperation. Our correspondent Gulçin Kocaliyeva has more.
Azerbaijan's trade with African countries increased significantly, rising from $150 million in 2023 to $580 million in 2025, a trend reflecting growing economic potential between the two sides. The development was highlighted at the Africa Day conference in Baku under the theme Rising Continent, Emerging Partnerships. The event brought together diplomats, officials and experts to discuss strengthening Azerbaijan-Africa relations. Two panel discussions were held. The first one focused on Azerbaijan-Africa relations, exploring current cooperation and future strategic opportunities with participation from ambassadors, Azerbaijani diplomats and members of parliament.
Azerbaijan-Africa relations is constantly growing. Now we have diplomatic relations with almost all African countries except one and Central African Republic, and we are working on concluding a memorandum of understanding, establishing diplomatic relations with this country as well. This September we are going to finalize it. Of course, there is still untapped potential that we can explore further in the cooperation between Azerbaijan and Africa.
We want to affirm that indeed we find Azerbaijan to be a very significant partner. The potential we see are in areas of cooperation relating to energy. As you know, sub-Saharan Africa is experiencing shortages and challenges with energy distribution, energy production.
Dear students, and now please... Participants were also introduced to ASAN Services' international cooperation initiatives in Africa, highlighting its expanding engagement on the continent. The second panel examined Africa's role in the evolving global system, focused on Agenda 2063 and long-term development priorities. The conference underscores growing political dialogue and expanding cooperation between Azerbaijan and African nations. Gulçin Kocaliyeva, Natiq Mamedov, A News.
Armenia has taken a major step in reshaping its regional connectivity, and Georgia is at the heart of it. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan announced the Ahal-Kalaki-Kars line is officially open for Armenian exports and imports, calling it a landmark moment, and Tbilisi is being credited as a key partner in making it happen. Our Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
Armenia's transport map just got redrawn, and Georgia holds a central place in it. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan announced on May 24th that the Ahal-Kalaki-Kars railway running through Georgian territory and into Turkey is now open for Armenian cargo, both exports and imports. Pashinyan personally thanked Tbilisi and Ankara for their cooperation, recognizing Georgia's role as the essential transit bridge that makes the entire corridor work. The route connects into the broader Baku-Tbilisi-Kars rail network, giving Armenia onward access to European and global markets, while reducing logistics costs and delivery times. For Georgia, deeper integration of the corridor means increased transit volumes, stronger regional relevance, and growing leverage as a hub between Europe and Asia. The backdrop matters. Turkey and Armenia have no diplomatic relations, and the border between these two countries has been closed since 1993, when Ankara shut it in support of Azerbaijan during the Karabakh conflict. Georgia's territory effectively fills that gap, allowing trade to flow between the two neighbors without requiring a direct border opening. Turkey's special envoy for Armenia normalization, Serdar Kilic, welcomed the development, calling it a step toward direct trade and expressing hope that it would strengthen the emerging four-way cooperation between Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia, a grouping in which Tbilisi plays a quiet but indispensable role. Pashinyan said the next steps will include direct Armenia-Turkey and Armenia-Azerbaijan railways, followed by an Armenia-Iran rail link via Nakhchivan, all under the US-backed TRIP project, the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. As the region rewires its connectivity, Georgia finds itself not on the sidelines, but squarely in the middle of one of the South Caucasus' most consequential transport shifts in decades. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Russia and Armenia's shifting relationship is again in focus, this time over energy supplies and Yerevan's ties with the European Union. The Kremlin says Armenia's future path of economic integration remains an open question, despite Yerevan saying it doesn't plan to pursue anti-Russian policies. This issue was discussed in Moscow during talks between President Putin and Prime Minister Pashinyan. Armenia is still a member of the Eurasian Economic Union, but has also taken steps to deepen relations with the European Union, including launching an accession process.
We have also heard statements from the Armenian leadership that there is a very attractive and highly concessional price for Russian gas and energy supplies. This is indeed the case. Russia remains a reliable and responsible supplier of energy to all countries, and especially to its closest allies and partners. But of course, such a regime is not possible for participants of other integration frameworks. There, the pricing category is entirely different. It is market-based. This is well known to our friends in Yerevan. We continue the dialogue.
Iran says 20 airports across the country have resumed operations following the war, according to the Civil Aviation Organization. Officials say the reopened airports now account for about 40% of Iran's total airport network. Authorities also announced that Tabriz International Airport is expected to resume operations within the next week, with flights planned to 9 destinations, including Istanbul, Baghdad, Dubai, Baku and Hamburg. Iran currently has 57 active civilian airports, including 14 international hubs, handling an average of 30 million passengers annually. Iran confirmed it's in the process of finalizing a memorandum of understanding with the United States, mediated by Pakistan, insisting an end to war. Releasing Iran's frozen assets and removal of maritime blockade are key clauses in Tehran's 14-point proposal to reach a peace deal. Our correspondent Turaj Shiralilo reports from Tehran.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Ismail Baqai has confirmed that Tehran and Washington are adding the finishing touches to an interim peace deal, while the mediated exchange of proposals and counter-proposals are inching slowly despite a burst of diplomatic optimism. According to the state-owned IRNA news agency, the spokesman announced that there are a number of stumbling blocks in the ongoing peace process mediated by Pakistan. Notably, Tehran's demanding complete end to hostilities as well as releasing its frozen assets. He added that lifting the maritime blockade over Iran's southern ports in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman stands out in Iran's conditions to sign what he termed a memorandum of understanding with the US. Meantime, the Revolutionary Guards (IRGC) announced that it allowed 33 vessels to sail across the Strait of Hormuz in one day, as there has been an increase in the number of ships transiting the narrow strategic waterway since last week. In a statement on Sunday, it said that over the past 24 hours, 33 vessels, including oil tankers, container ships, and other commercial vessels, passed through the Strait of Hormuz after obtaining permits and with the coordination of the IRGC Navy. In another development, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs, Kazem Garibabadi, met the Omani Foreign Minister, Badr al-Busaidi, in Muscat on Sunday and conveyed him the verbal message of the Iranian Foreign Minister. According to a post on the senior Iranian diplomat's X account, he also held a meeting in Oman to review a set of principles governing the passage of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, while respecting the security and national sovereignty of the coastal states of the Strait and in light of applicable rules of international law. Over the weekend, Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi held phone calls with the UN chief, Iraqi Kurdistan president, and his counterparts from Qatar for 2 times, Iraq, Turkey, Oman, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. The Iranian Foreign Ministry said in its statements that the talks focused on the latest diplomatic developments in the region aimed at preventing an escalation of tension and ending the war imposed by the US and Israel against Iran. Turaj Shiralilo, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Iran says it's seeking an international criminal court investigation into a deadly missile strike on an elementary school in the southern city of Minab earlier this year. According to Iran's local media, authorities have filed both domestic and international legal cases over the February 28th missile strike on an elementary school in Minab, which reportedly killed more than 160 people, most of them children. Iranian officials and representatives from the International Association of Lawyers say they are seeking an international criminal court review of the attack, calling it a possible war crime. Turkey says it's ready to support the implementation of a potential agreement involving Iran and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The comments came during a series of weekend calls between President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and US President Donald Trump, and also regional leaders amid renewed speculation over a possible diplomatic breakthrough with Tehran. Our correspondent Adam Morrow reports.
Ankara is signaling that it wants to play a constructive role in any potential diplomatic arrangement involving Iran, particularly one that could help secure maritime stability in the Gulf and ease pressure on global energy markets. According to the Turkish presidency, President Erdogan told Donald Trump and regional leaders over the weekend that guaranteeing free passage through the Strait of Hormuz would contribute to regional stability and provide relief to the global economy. The comments came after Trump announced Saturday that a largely negotiated memorandum of understanding linked to an Iran peace deal would lead to the reopening of the strategically vital waterway. Iranian state media, however, later disputed that characterization, creating uncertainty over how close any agreement may actually be. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most critical energy choke points, with roughly a fifth of globally traded oil passing through the narrow corridor linking the Persian Gulf to international markets. Any disruption of the waterway has immediate implications for oil prices, shipping costs, and broader economic stability. Turkey, which imports significant volumes of energy and sits at the crossroads of regional trade routes, has consistently pushed for de-escalation in the Gulf and diplomatic solutions to regional crises. Ankara's latest remarks suggest it is positioning itself as a possible mediator or facilitating actor if negotiations between Iran and the United States move forward. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council Rustem Umerov in Ankara on Sunday. The meeting took place in the Turkish capital as part of ongoing talks between Turkey and Ukraine. Fidan and Umerov held talks following a photo session. The Sunday meeting follows recent high-level contacts between Turkish and Ukrainian officials, though authorities declined to provide additional details about the specific agenda or duration of discussions between Fidan and Umerov. Uzbekistan has approved a new special tax regime allowing foreign citizens to receive exemptions from taxes on income earned abroad as part of efforts to attract international investors and highly qualified specialists.
Under the new regulation approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, foreigners living in Uzbekistan will be able to apply for exemptions from taxes on income received from sources outside the country. Applications will be reviewed by the Tax Committee and a special commission. To qualify, applicants must own or rent property in Uzbekistan and stay in the country for at least 30 days within a 12-month period. Applications can be submitted through public service centers or online government portals. Foreign citizens granted the status will pay a special fee of $50,000, while an additional $10,000 will apply for each participating minor family member. The maximum duration of the special tax regime is 5 years. Authorities say the measure is aimed at improving Uzbekistan's investment attractiveness and simplifying residency conditions for foreign nationals. Participants in the program will also receive fast access to residence permits. It is Civil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Kazakhstan's capital is set to host a series of major political events this week, with Russian President Vladimir Putin expected in Astana for a state visit alongside meetings of the Eurasian Economic Union. Our correspondent Fariza Kalumurzina reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected in Kazakhstan this week for a state visit at the invitation of President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. Putin will be in Astana from May 27th to 29th, with talks expected to focus on strategic cooperation and allied ties between Kazakhstan and Russia. The visit comes as the two countries maintain close cooperation across energy, transport, industry, and transit. Trade turnover exceeded $27 billion last year, making Russia one of Kazakhstan's largest economic partners. At the same time, there have also been trade tensions. Kazakhstan's exports to Russia fell by nearly 17% despite overall trade growth, while restrictions on some agricultural exports and transport routes have complicated trade. One recent example was the suspension of Kazakh oil transit to Germany through the Druzhba pipeline. And against this backdrop, talks between Tokayev and Putin are expected to focus not only on political coordination, but also on trade, logistics, and energy cooperation. Alongside the bilateral meetings, Putin is also expected to take part in the Eurasian Economic Forum on May 28th, followed a day later by a meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council in Astana. One notable absence, however, will be Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who has confirmed he will not attend. Officially, Yerevan says the decision is linked to domestic political commitments, but it comes at a time when Armenia has been moving closer to the European Union. Parliament recently approved in first reading a bill launching the country's EU accession process. Experts expect Armenia's future inside the Eurasian Economic Union to remain part of discussions in Astana. Fariza Kalumurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Armenia's EU visa talks and expanding South Caucasus connectivity. See you shortly. Welcome back to News. We continue with diplomatic and regional connectivity developments involving Armenia, the European Union and the broader South Caucasus. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has announced that visa liberalization between Armenia and the European Union could be completed within 2 years, as both sides continue implementing reforms in governance, security and data protection. At the same time, Pashinyan says Armenia is witnessing a historic expansion of its transport links. He confirmed that the Halkalaki-Kars railway route is now operational for Armenian trade flows, alongside access to routes through Azerbaijan and Georgia, strengthening Armenia's integration into regional and European connected supply chains. He also pointed to the expected future rail links with Turkey and Iran as part of wider regional normalization efforts, often associated with emerging connectivity frameworks in the South Caucasus. Adding further diplomatic weight, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to visit Armenia on May 26 for high-level talks with Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan, with bilateral agreements and joint statements anticipated. Joining us now is Yashar Sarı, Professor of International Relations and Director of the Heydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies. Mr. Sarı, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
Mr. Sarı, how realistic is the 2-year timeline for Armenia's visa liberalization with the EU, given the technical and political criteria involved?
I mean, it depends on the election, the result of the election. If the Pashinyan pro-European Prime Minister continue his position, then he will fulfill the requirement of the abolishing the visa regime. One thing is the problematic. The European visa regime, they expect that the country who can secure its border area. But already we know that between Armenian border with Turkey and also some part of the Armenian border, Iran, is still we see the Russian soldiers. So in that sense, that is the creating a small problem, but that problem also can overcome.
Mr. Sarı, Pashinyan has highlighted new railway connectivity, including the Halkalaki-Kars route. How transformative could this be for Armenia's economy?
I mean, the first thing is that this is a strategic movement. This is the opening this way before the border opened between Armenia and Turkey. The connecting Armenia with the bigger and broader market. That means that through Turkey, Armenia can reach the European markets. For that reason, even this is a connection through Georgia. This railway connecting through Georgia and Turkey was important for the Armenia, because it will be potentially reshaping regional trade route between Europe and Asia too.
So how do you assess the geopolitical implications of Armenia gaining indirect rail access through Turkey and Azerbaijan linked corridors?
I mean, the first thing is the potential peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan will change the whole South Caucasus. And as we know already, because of the northern corridor is closed, and the middle corridor, which is the products coming from China and going to China through from Europe through South Caucasus, there is a bottleneck. That bottleneck is the Zengezur corridor and the other railways which is passing through this region. So this is the beginning. So Halkalaki-Kars railway opening for Armenian also using this way, and already Azerbaijan providing and permitting the Russian and the Kazakh products passing Azerbaijan territory to going Armenia, make the Armenian decade of the economic isolation ending. So that is the for the Armenia is the very important. The second thing is when you having this kind of trade corridor and making the connection through railway connection, highway connection, that will be create a more peaceful atmosphere. Means that trust among the regional countries will increase. That's also turned this region a potential investment area. For that reason, the Pashinyan's movement, if he followed all what we are expecting from him, then it will create the more peaceful condition, more economic and economically, politically stable region. That's increase also investment. So this is the kind of multiple effect we can see.
Mr. Sari, finally, what is the significance of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's upcoming visit to Yerevan?
I mean, first, let's not forget, before the Armenia last 6 months had the different leaders and as well as the American Vice President G.D. Vance. So that's showing us that the Rubio's coming to Armenia for 2 things. One is the American really ready to invest the Zengezur corridor. This Zengezur corridor is not only the economic investment. This is more strategic step. The second thing is to having the Rubio in Armenia. That's also indicating us to United States supporting the Pashinyan's election. So they don't want to lose the current Armenian government, because the Armenian government is shifting in their its allegiance from Russia to mainly to Western countries, and of course the Americans is leading the state. So that is the is important things. Another things, Rubio is showing that the Caucasus region is not anymore the isolated region, and I mean, including the Armenia, we can say. Azerbaijan already established a strong relation with the international investment and the main actors. But that's whole region. They are not taking the only one country, but the whole region. They want to be have this South Caucasus region part of the Western economic and the military environment.
Mr. Yashar Sari, thank you very much for talking to A News. We appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Not at all. Have a nice
Thanks. This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay with us for further updates.